Welcome to Tech Turks. Today I have Abasi, the CEO of 54 Gene. 54 Gene is about improving the lives of Africans using a new type of healthcare, and he's here to tell us about it. Abasi, welcome to Tech Turks. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
So 54 Gene. So what's in the name first, and what 54 Gene really about?
So 54 Gene, the 54 there represents the 54 countries in Africa, which obviously tells you that we want to expand across the continent. And the gene there means that at heart, we are genetic in terms of how we apply what we do. So to tell you what we do, we provide genetic testing directly to consumers and to hospitals in Africa. And let me just talk about the direct-to-consumer aspect. So imagine that you are a woman.
Yes.
Well, you're not a woman, but
yes, my wife is a woman.
Now, typically, let's talk about cervical cancer, for example. You can prevent cervical cancer, but in Africa, people don't do the necessary tests needed for cervical cancer. So, typically in other parts of the world, between the ages of 22 to 65, a woman is meant to do a test every 3 years for HPV, which is the virus that causes cervical cancer. Now, if you were going to do that test in Nigeria, you will go to a doctor who will perform what they call a pap smear. It's an invasive process, and women don't like it because it could be a man who basically goes to the cervix and is scraping cells from your cervix. Now, what we do is we have this kit that you can buy online or very soon in any pharmacy. And you can go home and do the sampling. It's like using an earbud you use to clean your ears to just collect surface cells. And then we do the HPV test and you get your results online. And you can use that to prevent cancer.
So and that example. So you buy the kit online. Mm-hmm. Then you get the product sent to you.
Yes.
And then which you use and then you send it back.
Yes.
So I can understand that working in places where you have postal addresses and a system that works.
Yes.
How do you intend to do it in a place like Nigeria? Lagos I can understand, but other parts of the country like the north and like the south, where these things are really needed as well.
Yes. So in those areas, we then leverage the power of logistics more than the power of tech. Right, in the sense that, we may not be able to have correct addresses, but we have what we call drop-off locations, and that's why we sell it through pharmacies. So you could go into a pharmacy, you buy the kit, when you finish the collection, you take the envelope which we provide back to the pharmacy, and then we pick it up from that pharmacy, and then you get your result as well.
What's your target and the objectives in this area in terms of numbers?
So every woman between the age of 22 to 65.
So sorry, are you focusing on women?
No.
Are there other things that men need to know?
Of course.
Yes.
Prostate cancer tests. You can now do that at home. PSA tests, rather than going to a doctor, you can buy the kit from a store. You collect your sample, you return it, you get your results online. Genetic tests that can tell you your predisposition to diseases like cardiovascular, that's heart diseases, cancers. You can also get that from us. Things like allergy tests for your kid or for yourself to find out your allergy to food. You can also get that. Now, the interesting thing too, and this is just on the consumer side. The interesting thing is that if you were to do some of these tests, for instance, the cervical cancer test in a hospital, you will pay about 40 to 50,000 naira. We provide convenience and a price of about 15,000 naira, right? And that's just for the direct-to-consumer. Now, on the hospital side, we provide tests to doctors who are treating diseases from cancers to cardiovascular diseases, providing precision medicine in the hospitals so that people don't. Here's one issue that we find in Africa and in Nigeria too. You have cancer, you go to see a doctor. Because we haven't built the genetic capability in the country, the doctor prescribes a drug for you blindly. Right? When I say blindly, what we mean is that today's cancer drugs have been made to target specific subtypes of cancers. Now, colorectal cancer is not just, that's colon cancer, it's not just colon cancer. there is KRAS mutation colon cancer, which requires cetuximab, that it's been shown that if you treat with, and I know going
But I'm going to assume that you're like,
Okay.
I didn't ask you this question at the beginning, what your background was, but you're a medical doctor, a pharmacist, or somebody that's really into medicine.
So interest, I'm not technically, I'm not a clinician, but I have a PhD in cancer medicine, and I also
that says it.
and I have a master's in human molecular genetics. I also have an MBA.
So you're now going into the commercial side of your profession. Now, question. So how big is your market?
Our market.
So I'm assuming the preventative type and the curing side.
Here is an interesting stat. If molecular diagnostics was implemented in Africa as it is implemented in Brazil and India, sub-Saharan Africa,
Please, for us and the viewers. Okay. Molecular.
Okay. If genetic type of diagnostic testing,
okay,
right? And you know, genes are the things that make up who we are, right? So if that type of diagnostics is implemented in Africa as it is in places like India and Brazil, just in sub-Saharan Africa, it's estimated to be an $8 to $14 billion market. But then that's just on the testing side. We have a secondary market that caters to the pharmaceutical companies, where we partner with the leading teaching hospitals, and we're in 10 teaching hospitals in Nigeria at the moment, building what we call a biobank of African genetic samples, which will power drug research. And now companies that have exited in that space have exited at $400 million, $2 billion, $5 billion.
So it's clearly it's a big market, but so how did you start this, and how did you fund this, and who backed you, and who had the confidence that this would be an opportunity in the African continent?
So I worked abroad for some time. I consulted for the drug companies. I worked in the healthcare data space. I decided to come back I wanted to do something that connected Africa to the global healthcare space. And when I came back, now, I don't know if the way I went about this was right. I tried to raise money in Nigeria first.
Okay.
The valuations were ridiculously low.
And I was going to ask you, why not Nigeria? Because I heard that you've also raised some seed funding.
Yes. Now,
and not from Nigeria, of course.
So most not from Nigeria. However, when we started, we did like a friend and family type round. The people who came in at that round have probably made 10 to 20 times now within 5 months. And so that's why, yes, you should really back Nigerian companies, because some people are actually doing interesting things.
So what's next in terms of the data? Because clearly you will be collecting data. So how are you going to use that to create that competitive advantage against the others? So
the way we do the data, we're not collecting data from the tests that we do because of privacy issues.
Okay.
But we have a separate collection called our biobank. So we actually go and talk to patients just for data, and they know that they're giving us their blood samples for the data, right, for research. By the end of this year, we'll have genomic samples from 40,000 people coupled with their medical records. And by the end of next year, we'll probably have close to 500,000. Now that powers drug research. The goal is, the reason we do that is that we find that African genetic information is actually valuable to understanding mutations that you can model as drugs. There's 2 drugs now that were recently launched based on findings in Africans. One of them is $1 billion class of drugs. The other one was just launched early this year, so we don't know how it's going to perform. Right, so that is really our competitive advantage, what we do on the research side. And the way we also approach that is we work with local researchers. So we have about 50 academic doctors who are working with us, helping us get the data samples, who will be publishing results from it, and we are beginning to see what is actually happening. There are diseases I could mention to you now that we know are happening in our hospitals, which before we did not know. Rare diseases like Huntington's disease. I studied Huntington's when I was in school. It was supposed to be a disease that affected white people, a genetic disease where as you get older, your muscles begin to atrophy. Yeah. It's happening in Nigeria. And the drug companies who make these drugs don't know, because we haven't had data coming out from the hospitals And so you have this situation where the patients cannot get drugs because the people who should give them the drugs don't know that there's a market for them here. So by also doing what we're doing, we're curating the disease profile of Africans, and hopefully we can use that to begin to target them for drugs.
Abasi, thank you very much for coming on to Tech Turks, and also wishing you the best in the Nigerian space.
Thank you so much.